Back in the 1967 Triumph. This is, I guess, phase 3. Last time we took care of all the electrical issues, or at least diagnosed them. Now, time for the hydraulics, brakes, and clutch. So, I have a quart of brake fluid, some new rear brake shoes. Remember the very first day when we moved this thing, the right rear wheel was seized up, and they basically disintegrated, but we got the wheel off. So, game plan is, you know, we'll do simple stuff first. We'll start with the brakes. Fill that with brake fluid. At least the brake cylinder. Yeah, I mean, we'll clean it out, blow it out, fill it with some brake fluid, and get the rear wheels off, and just see if everything moves. If the piston, master cylinder, can start pumping fluid through, that would be great. We'll probably take the rear slave cylinders apart just to get all the crap out of there and replace those brake shoes. Then the front wheels, I'm guessing I'll probably take it off and get the junk out of, or at least bleed the brakes. There's probably some stuff in the calipers, but you know, if they work perfectly fine and the fluid bleeds through, then we just might leave the front discs, you know, as is without taking the wheel off. The clutch is going to be more of a challenge because of that, so we'll have to vacuum that out, and I don't know, we might have to take the whole master cylinder off, the slave cylinder. So let's start with the brakes, see how it goes. Well, this side came apart so easy in like 1 minute. Nothing was seized up. I got the torch ready. I did put a little heat on the bleeder screw and those two little bolts that hold the drum on, but those are basically loose. So as you can see, these shoes are also very delaminating. So obviously we're replacing both sides. Yeah, let's clean out that master cylinder. It looks like this, let's see, so this must be a floating slave cylinder because it only has one piston, so it pushes the pads apart and it kind of, you know, floats on its holder there. So pretty neat. Let's see if we can get any fluid through here. Alright, let's get these shoes off of here. So a cotter pin, two little keepers, nice and easy. Okay, so I usually keep these all together. We put them kind of in order right in the drum so you know exactly where the pieces came from. Looks like we have two springs. Might be able to just release all this stuff and get the whole shoe assembly off in one go. So just kind of fold them like that. There's one spring, fell off. Release the spring tension. We're good. Perfect. So this moves the whole slave cylinder, but we don't know if the piston's going to move. So I'm going to take off the little circlip and the rubber cap. I know we're going to find lots of corrosion and stuff. Yeah, I just basically want to start pumping fluid through there and see what happens. Get the piston out and flush everything out. Alright, let's wipe all the junk out. We want it spotless before we put any fresh fluid in there. Looks pretty good. Now all the crusties just clean right up. Alright, moment of truth here. Let's pour in some fresh fluid. And then we'll start pumping. Let's put a drain pan under here and crack the bleeder loose. See if we can get any fluid to go through. Clutches all the way down. Let's see. Let's see what's happening under the hood. Anything happening? Well, if nothing's happening, we have to go under the rubber boot and see if the rod is actually depressing whatever's inside of the piston. There's the rod. Here's the linkage. I don't see any bubbles or anything. Alright, as you can see, the hole is completely empty. What I suspect is that the piston isn't retracting all the way, so this thing can't even start to kind of prime itself. And you can feel that in the pedal. There is, well, maybe it starting to prime. There we go. We might get a little bit. I'll just put a rag here and pump it a couple times. Well, this is interesting. I can actually push something in with my pick, like a spring-loaded plunger. So that's definitely not stuck. Why is it not intaking any fluid? I mean, let's say you release the brake pedal. There's a little vacuum in there. Should it, if I hold it in, oh, there it goes. Yep. Interesting. So it must be some kind of spring-loaded valve that only opens under vacuum. I've never seen that before. Usually, it's almost like a reverse master cylinder. It's being pushed in that way towards the reservoir. Usually the reservoir fills, the master cylinder, then it pushes towards the brake line. But it's English, so maybe that's normal. Let's pump the brake pedal and see if we get fluid out of here now. So I have the front left bleeder cracked loose, and we are finally seeing some signs of life. Yes, there's some fluid coming out. That's good. It should be squirting out. It's just dripping out. I mean, there's some continuity from the master cylinder to the wheel. Maybe I should try a vacuum bleeder. Try to suck that through. I got 3 more wheels to do. So our fluid level is definitely down in the reservoir, and I keep pushing that, make sure all the bubbles are out. And there's some drippage there, so I put a hose on there, aimed it towards the pan. What I noticed was now the pedal feels, it only has like less than half the travel now. Now it just like stops. So something definitely pump through. Is there a blockage in the line? Right now it should just squirt right out of there. So let's see if anything happens if I push the pedal really hard. It's dripping slowly. Okay. Something else activated. Okay, this came out. Now we're dripping out of here. Well, that's good. We kind of wanted that. Let's put the pan under here. Alright, so we're getting somewhere, but I'm not sure things are working correctly. So I stuffed the pick in there and I clamped it down so it keeps pushing on that one-way valve. Now if we pump the pedal, it easily falls through the floor, and you can see the level in the reservoir goes up and down. And some bubbles did come out. So, you know, did that bleed itself through? Now let's release the clamp. So now that valve should be shut. And the pedal is still. Falling to the floor. I just don't understand. So I cracked that bleeder loose. A couple drops came out. This one was dripping okay. The rear one was dripping okay. There's something wrong with this master cylinder. It's not refilling itself. And each time it somehow gets air. It gets air in there. And the only other place the air could come from, you know, this is tight, everything's tight, is the seal on the shaft. So when it retracts, instead of pulling in fluid, it's pulling in air from this side, I think. That's my only explanation right now. And it's a weird design, because every time I do this and let all the bubbles out, the pedal gets nice and stiff, and you have one good pump. And then it goes to the floor again. So that's what's going on. Alright, so with the right front wheel we have some issues. So I took the fitting off here, I took the fitting off here. We want to check the hose. This one is kind of, the fitting is kind of bent and the hose is a little kinked right there. So everything's loose. If I blow in through the bleeder, we get fluid out of the caliper. That's fine. Now if I blow through the hose, we get nothing through the hose. And this line, if I push on that valve in the master cylinder, we get a nice flow here. So we have a bad hose. We need all new hoses, unfortunately. Well, I think that's it for today. We need more parts. So last night I went online looking for parts for this 1967 Triumph GT6. Moss Motors is an amazing website for these old British cars. You can get brake hoses, rebuild kits for master and slave cylinders for not much money at all. So I ordered 4 brake hoses, rebuild kits for the master cylinders. Altogether it was like $100. You know, minimal expenses, and we'll get these things working like new. I also printed off the OEM service manual for master cylinder operation. How does this thing work? It's not your classic master cylinder, it's a little different. So here we have a couple diagrams. So brakes released and brakes pressed. What are all the components here, and what are the seals, and why were we not getting fluid from the reservoir into the actual cylinder. We're getting air in. Like, the bubbles kept coming out. So I was pushing this thing in with my pick. We're getting bubbles out, and then once those bled out, you have one nice stroke. Then you release the pedal, and then this thing fills up with air instead of fluid. So the air has to be coming in from the the shaft side where the push rod is. So let's read a little bit. When brake pedal is released, hydraulic pressure created by the brake shoe pull-off spring plus the plunger return spring causes the plunger to return to its rear stop. The last 1/32 inch of movement withdraws the valve shank 5 rearwards, lifting the seal 2 from its seat on the end face of the cylinder, thus permitting recuperation of the hydraulic fluid to the reservoir via the drilled passage. So that wasn't happening. So when it's released, this shank is actually supposed to be pulled by the plunger a little bit to let fluid refill this area. So either this isn't returning all the way back, that's a possibility, or maybe this shank is detached from the piston. That's also a possibility. Right? We have to take these things apart. Pretty easy to remove. Just a circlip, 2 bolts where you got the line removed, off it comes. And then we can take it apart like we see here on page 2. So to remove, drain the fluid, withdraw the unit. To dismantle, depress the push rod, remove the circlip, draw push rod together with items 10 and 11, shake out the plunger, spring and valve assembly, if necessary blow it out. Yep. Detach the valve shank by passing it through the offset hole in the retainer 7. So right here is the exploded diagram. Very nice to have. Plunger, seal, spring retainer, and then this shank and the seal, that's what lets fluid in from the reservoir into the cylinder. So this, when it's all the way back, it's supposed to pull on this just a hair to let that fluid in. That's not happening. So let's just get this whole assembly off and tear it apart. Oh boy. Well, there's a minor mess hiding behind this rubber boot. So we gotta clean all this up, get all the crusties out of there, and see if that piston is gonna return all the way. So this is like an archaeological dig here. Can we find the circlip? Looks like there it is. Try to pop that out. We'll see what the bore looks like. Alright, so the push rod is out. Now let's see if we can get the piston to retract all the way. I mean, it's close. You can see the bore is kind of corroded. That's why it doesn't want to come back all the way. That's probably our entire issue with this thing. If we just get it to retract, we'll be in business. Man, I am so... This is like deja vu working on the Zaz. Remember the master cylinder that was stuck and we were just working it until it finally popped out. Now, it did say in the instructions that you could apply some air to this port, and that should blow out the piston. So just make sure it's facing away from you. And then keep working it. So right at the end there, it is seized up. So maybe I can depress it and clean that bore somehow with something, and then hopefully it will come out. I think this method is working. It's coming. Oh, it's almost there. Yes. Here's the plunger. So it is all together. The seals actually look pliable, which is a miracle. So this is just a flat seal that seals up against the hole in there. And the bore looks mint. This seal looks mint. This is not like the Zaz where the seals were torn up and the brake fluid was completely solidified. Everything looks really good. So it just needs a little cleaning, some fresh fluid, and should be good to go. This is amazing. I'll clean up that bore a little better. So master cylinder should be restored today, and then we'll try to bleed the clutch through. That'll be interesting. Alright, so I filled some brake fluid in here in the reservoir and pumped it a few times, and it's still sucking vacuum on my thumb instead of drawing in fluid, and there's still that free play. So my question is, what is supposed to make this piston retract all the way? Because that spring just forces the front and the rear seals apart, but then the seal is still plugging up the hole for the reservoir. So if I push it with my pick, it actually moves pretty freely, and then the fluid starts coming in here like it should. But what gives it that little extra push to retract? I'm trying to figure that out. It's not very clear from, from here. I mean, all the pieces are there. Seal, spring retainer. What is this? There's the seal for that. See, this does not look original. Because that has a seal like that with this number 4, which is the distance piece. So I have to look up at some parts diagrams to see what the original design was. Okay, let's see if we can reverse engineer this. So I took apart the return spring. Here's the little, what do they call it? The plunger, seal plunger, and there's a little wavy washer right here. So let's keep looking at the diagram. Right here at the exploded view, there's the little number 3, which is spring. Okay, there's the seal, there's the little spacer piece, and what happens when the spring extends all the way? So it pulls on the shaft, which is supposed to pull the seal into the spacer, and the spacer is up against the body of the master cylinder, and that's supposed to let the fluid in. Okay? What I think is going on here is this seal is kind of swollen. It's not really in great shape, and when this plunger is pulled in, you can see the seal is not pulled in with it, and basically not letting the fluid into the reservoir. It's supposed to be a little beyond the spacer when it's pulled in. See? It's still sealing. So that's bad. We need a new seal for sure. Everything else is fine. So I'm going to order that rebuild kit. Let's tear apart the clutch slave cylinder, or the master cylinder. See what that looks like. Well, the clutch master cylinder is going to be even more fun to clean out. Let's dump the goodies. Wow. Petrified brake fluid. Simply amazing. Let's blow this sucker out. Okay. Starting to look good. You can see the plunger is all the way depressed, so we're going to have to free that up. Well, in the clutch master cylinder, the piston seems to have popped up fairly easily. Let's exercise it a little bit more. There we go. Should be able to gently grab it and lift it out. There we go. Nice. And look, the spring retainer got stuck down in the bore. There we go. Perfect. So that's what the seal looks like on the end. It is nasty. It is completely torn up. So it looks a little bit different than the brake master cylinder, but pretty similar. So I'm going to get all new seals. You can see that seal is soft as it's mushy, completely not usable. But the spring is there, everything is in place. So we'll put this back together and wait for new seals. There's no way we can bleed the clutch with this in place, unfortunately. So that's it for today.